Creo que este es el momento.
I think it's about time to start saying, oh, hang on a minute, bend down, the tanks are coming. Just watch it. Get in your trenches, the tanks are coming, and here I am, I'm your tank. But I'm going to try to get across to you the idea and the changes, what we're doing, what we're now working on, and what you're all doing very well, thank you. The number of changes that we're making to head towards the future, but we need to do a little bit more. We've still got a few more things to retouch, which I want to explain to you now. And that's why the title of my talk is The Audacity of Being Daring. What I want to do is to convince you, to convince all of you of how important it is to be daring. We're all very daring in Basque VET, but we're going to be even more so. We have to do more things. We have to do things differently. We need to take different paths. We're doing that now, but we still need to do more things that are a bit more complicated, that we're getting involved in, but they're going to be very, very important. 2 years ago, in this very room, I told you that we were at a difficult time, that things were not great, and that in addition to the two terrible crises that we were going through, one of the most important factors for getting out of that crisis and also to grow continuously and to reach competitiveness and social welfare would require a lot of concentration on VET, on vocational educational and training. And it's true that we had been working on that a great deal for many years, but we needed to change things because companies needed different things, and because the people that were going to be working in these companies needed to be fully skilled and skilled in a different way. But also there were companies that required our support to innovate, and that what was even more important, that we needed to generate productive fabric. Last year, 2014, those of you that were here listening to me last year, I said to you that we were in a tunnel, but we could see a little light at the end of the tunnel. We were still in the tunnel, but we could still see a little light at the end of the tunnel. But we didn't know whether that was the exit to the tunnel or the lights from a train that was coming to roll us down and flatten us. But we were hoping that actually it was going to be a light at the end of the tunnel. It was going to be the exit to the tunnel. Because if vocational training could get out of this tunnel in a speedy fashion, we were going to be prepared to face important, complex challenges. And today I can say to you that we're coming out of the tunnel, and that we're coming out of this tunnel with a certain amount of guarantee. We're thinking about what we're doing. We're structuring the economy properly. We're structuring our production sector properly. We're advancing towards new fields. We're working towards new professions, new specializations, and we're working so that the people that we've got are the best that they can be, so that our companies can be the best that they can be. So we're getting moving. We're not stopping. We're always heading forward. We're doing things, just doing things, getting on with things, which is precisely what vocational training is doing in the Basque Country and in many other sectors. It is true that when things go well, you get things right. But when things don't go well, you learn things. And we've learned a great deal. We know where problems are, we know where we should be heading, and we know what we're heading towards. And our job is to convince you to drive forward with us, to follow the road that we feel that we need for the future. Because when we talk about changing society, this is something that people talk about all the time. We're in a knowledge society, but it's true. Industrial society no longer exists. We're in a different kind of society now, which is the knowledge society, and which is going to change. And we're going to move on to a new kind of society, which is the learning society. And I don't mean lifelong learning society. What I mean is a learning society, which I'm going to try to explain where we are and what we're heading towards. And we need to change the old structures of a society which was very good, an industrial society. We need to change to a new society, which is the true knowledge society. Before the crisis, we lived in one kind of world, but when we come out, emerging from this crisis, we find a different world. And we know that the world that we're getting involved in is a complex world, and there's going to be a great deal of uncertainty in it, and we need to be prepared. And we will prepare. Because we know evolution, we know who have survived in this world throughout millions and millions of years. And it's not usually the strongest nor the most intelligent. It's those that are best able to adapt to change. Those people that have been able to adapt to every moment in time are those that have survived. So in a changing world, in an increasingly competitive world, our challenge is to adapt. So that's where we are. Are we able to adapt to new situations? Because when we talk about changes, we talk about transformation. But changes and transformation fail if you are too late with them. And on this occasion, I think we're here on time. And vocational training, which was doing very well, and I want to say that you're doing a great job. And it's not just me that says that. I'm honored to be the Deputy Minister of Vocational Training at the Basque government. But the businessmen here, they also say that we're doing things properly. They know that we're doing good. We're getting good results, but that's now insufficient. We need to carry on working. We need to transform. We need to change. And this time, I think we're transforming with sufficient time. When we talk about progress by transformation, which is what I'm trying to get across to you, we need to change something old for something new. But what I'm going to try to explain to you is a little bit difficult. Normally, in industrial society, in traditional industrial society, and we're still in a kind of industrial society, you separate the thinkers from the doers. When a person or an organization or an administration or a firm, the greater a person is in that organization, the more they become thinkers, and everybody else becomes doers because they're told what they have to do. This is a model that we've had for years in industrial society, but we can't carry on like this. And if, in addition to that, you've got this idea of planning and control. Planning, control, and also hierarchy, of course. And then you have planning, hierarchy, control, and then things start getting up and getting running. But that's just naivety. Sometimes we don't actually know what we're doing. People think that they know what they're doing, and people think that if your boss has told you what to do, that's what you have to do. And this is what needs to be changed. Because in the past, in industrial society, in the previous model, we could have thought and planned years in advance. There were companies that planned their products 10 years in advance, but not one of them can do that now because nobody knows how long their product's going to last in the market. They don't even know how long this great idea that they had for producing that wonderful product is going to last. Everything is so fast today. Everything changes so quickly that we need to have rapid reaction ability, and far more rapid than we used to have in the past. We can't plan with much time. There's no point in looking towards the past to plan the future. That isn't worth anything now. And in fact, foresight, the only thing it can do is perhaps show us the trend, show us the tendency to follow. It's absolutely impossible today to predict the future. There's no way we can predict the future. We don't know what's going to happen, and you see that every day. The economy just jumps from one place to another. If the problem isn't Greece, it'll be Crimea, it'll be the International Monetary Fund, it'll be a drop in the stock exchange because somebody thinks that they've bought a load of shares, and then maybe in the US things are going to go badly, and then the stock exchange drops, the risk premium goes up, and we need to be prepared for uncertainty. And that's what we're trying to develop. What's more, when you talk about planning, and the first thing that you do when you're in a hierarchical situation is make something that's a standard or regulate, and then you have these regulations and then you start the actions. It's almost like it was the Bible. You have to plan according to what the Bible says. But sometimes when companies come to you and they try to explain their problems and the major problems that they have, what they're asking for is a specific kind of professional, or they want you to help them improve a process or a product. And when you say to that company, well, according to Article 3, Royal Decree 4 of the 14th of December, this is what you have to do. The Royal Decree tells you what you have to ask for. But we think that actually what companies are asking for is something completely different. They're not interested in the decree that was passed last December. Decrees, of course, are important, but they just give a framework so that what you do is correct and legal, but that's all they're there for. You can't just pass a law for the law's sake, because on many occasions, laws or regulations, what they try to do is predict reality. And they're trying to look into a crystal ball, but it's difficult to change that. It's always difficult to change regulations. So what do we have to do now? What we need to do now is to plan on the hoof. Every time we have a problem in a vocational training school or in a company or in the economy, we're going to have to change. So we need to react rapidly. We've got the present here now, but we always need to look towards how we can develop opportunities of the future. We can't base what we do on just indices. That was worthwhile in the past, but not anymore. Now we need to concentrate on the reality that we see every day to try to find a reply to how things are changing. And the thing is, there's a great clash at the moment going. There's a clash between administrative bureaucracy and knowledge flows. Knowledge is very speedy, flows very speedily, it's going to get even quicker, and yet regulations are very slow. And they're very complex. So what we need to do is to strike a balance and get sufficient rules and regulations so that knowledge flows more quickly, and so that we can get that knowledge quickly, so that we can adapt rapidly, of course, within a legal framework that needs to be as structured as possible. There's an example that we've spoken about on many occasions, and that's we're debating about. And this is related to exams. We still have the same old exams. They're just an objective. They just show that a person is prepared because they've passed an exam. But that's not true. That's not true anymore. In the past, if you just passed an exam, and we can all remember our teachers, people talk about coaches and about leadership. I always remember a teacher who I had who was genius. He was just a genius. He was a true genius. And he used to say to us, listen, little George, okay, you can learn only through pain. That was his expression. You need to learn, you need to repeat things, and it's going to be very painful. Well, that was his way of thinking. And he used to give us an example. He had a piece of poetry that he used to recite to us time and time again. I don't know if you all remember it, if you were at school at the same time that I was at school. I'm not going to bore you with this poem. But at the end of the day, that's what he thought. He thought that you had to suffer to learn something. He's just reciting the poem, but for those of you that weren't in the Basque education system at the time George was, you probably won't have heard it. He's reciting it from memory. I remember that. I can actually give it to you in Latin as well, because I had to learn it in Latin, I seem to remember. Or he'd used to say, Pablo, please stand up. Now, I'm going to give you the first part of the poem, and you've got to fill in the rest of it. And what's the best way of going about things? Just reciting this poem off by heart, or what? What's the best thing to do? Just to recite things off by heart or to learn? How come Armstrong was the first person to reach the moon? He's also the best trumpet player in the world. He wins 7 world cycling tours, and nobody else seems to suspect there's something wrong with him. But anyway, what's happening here? It's all very well passing exams, but just passing exams isn't a great deal. Having a paper qualification, of course, is important because it means that you've made a great deal of effort to get that qualification. But just because you've passed the exam doesn't mean you've learnt anything. And we need to remember that. A piece of paper qualification is just a piece of paper. All it means is that we've got a qualification, but it's not saying that we've got the skills necessary to do anything. And what we're asking for now, and we're going to be asked for increasingly, is that we have skills. And this is important because a qualification doesn't give you skills. Training can provide you with skills, but skills are the objective. You need to be competent. You need to be skilled. If you're skilled, companies are going to hire you. But just because you've got a piece of paper, they're not going to hire you. And it's important to remember that. You may have heard of this term overqualification. There are lots of university graduates that are overqualified. They've got complex training, and unfortunately, they're working in jobs that don't require this qualification. And they will say, oh, you know what, I'm so overqualified. There's a lot of statistics about that. Everybody talks about overqualification. But then if you look at the skills that that person has for the job that they have, they actually aren't skilled to do the job that they're supposed to be doing. They're just not prepared to do the job. They're prepared to do something completely different. That's what the labour market is beginning to realise, because unfortunately you've got all these people that have got all these very specific qualifications. You sometimes wonder, haven't they ever asked themselves, how come there are so many people with all these qualifications that aren't working? Unfortunately, it's because the labour market doesn't need that professional qualification anymore. They need something completely different. And it's not until they have the skills that the private market needs that they will be able to find a job. And this is what we need to remember, because at the end of the day, our working lives are becoming increasingly complex. We're going to need more complex skills, and we're going to need to update them quickly. People's skills, people's profile are very important. And we're going to need to modify them. And that's why we're changing the qualifications that we offer, because we want people to have the appropriate profile, and they need to be able to adapt and make progress personally and professionally. Randstad published a report on its website recently. It was very interesting. What it was a series of data that are very striking. And it sort of reflects what I'm trying to say to you. Firstly, the report spoke about Europe and said that 22% of companies cannot find workers with the appropriate skills profile that they need. And 60% believe that the students that are leaving college now are not going to have the skills that companies need. But in Spain, this 22% is actually 33%. And what's even more worrying is that in this report, that there's a sort of complaint that in Spain, education providers are very slow to adapting to the subsequent realities that come after an economic crisis. Because the education system seems to be carrying on as if nothing's happened when the world is changing. Of course, in a changing world, a static system is never going to be operative. We've got a system that needs to change. And if we have the ability to react, another thing that we're working on and that needs to be done is to work on this idea of control. What does control actually mean? This is another problem we seem to have. This wish to control everything. If you control, you can train things. You don't allow people to do things. You don't allow anything to move, because at the end of the day, what you're doing is just doing everything that you've envisaged, but nothing that you haven't envisaged, and yet everything that you haven't envisaged is actually what's going to happen, and you have to firefight. You're trying to sort of find solutions to specific problems that you hadn't envisaged. And what happens is that you just end up stonewalling. If you use your power, you just stonewall everything that's emerging, everything that's unforeseen. It's the people at the top, they just want to control things, and they think that if they haven't imagined that something's going to happen, then it shouldn't happen. They can't allow it to happen. But you can't strictly control things. We need to understand what we mean by control. And we cannot just stamp out, just stonewall the initiative ability that people have in companies, the independence that people have, so that they can respond to their surroundings, so that they can get across a message and provide the legal coverage to everything that needs to be done, because we need to find specific replies to specific problems. And this is going to come from the bottom upwards quite clearly, because we need to know what's happening, and somebody that's at the top, for whatever reason it may be, doesn't necessarily receive all the information. And yet, if we make use of the work and the job that we're doing with everybody else, we will be able to. We're quite clear on that. Sometimes we don't like people being protagonists, and I feel ashamed of that. We don't do that, because we like people to be protagonists. We like vocational training to appear in the papers, and I like to see my vocational training directors appear in the press. So I'd like to encourage you to appear and to be protagonists. The more they talk about us, even better. But there are some people that think that's not good, because they think, oh, I should be the one that should appear in the newspaper. I should be the one that should be giving this good piece of news, or it should be the minister. No, that's not true. But some people think that you shouldn't allow other people to strike agreements with other vocational training centers. No, they don't like that. They don't like that with people that raise their heads up above the parapet. And what's important of all of this is diversity. Through diversity, we're all going to be able to find the responses to different needs. We can't give the same old reply to different problems. We need diversity. Of course, we need knowledge professionals, because we're entering into a knowledge society. But knowledge professionals are actually different. They are people that learn continually and that gradually define the kind of knowledge that they need through the knowledge that they acquire. But you can't actually find out things, you can't actually learn without doing. Learning and doing go together. This is very important, because if we carry on thinking there are some people who think and others that do, then the knowledge is just going to be with those people who think. No, that's no good. We need people to think, that reflect, that decide, but that also do, that walk that talk. And we need vocational training colleges, and there are many vocational training college professionals here in the room. We need them all to think, but also to do. We need to praise you if you get things right, but we should never punish you if you get things wrong, because if you get things wrong, you surely will have learned something. So you always need to carry on progressing. And that's what we try to encourage you to do, because if we don't all work together, if we don't all join forces, we will just become knowledge islands. Each of these dots represents a VET school. That's what we looked like 20 years ago. We had these fantastic VET schools that all worked very well, but they were just islands floating around independently. In 1995, 1996, we set up a project to try to get VETs together to work for a common objective. And we called that a radial organization at the time. But in 2000, 2001, we took a further step and we started concentrating on networking. That is, we all had a common objective, but several VET colleges all tried together to try to improve the replies, the responses that we needed to give to different problems, but that's still insufficient. And now we've got to change things completely. And what we need to do now is become network hubs. And these hubs need to be effective, speedy, they need to have agreements between different VET colleges with different companies, and VET colleges need to do that. You can do that, and we're going to let you do that. What we want you to do is to get involved in the projects that you want to get involved in. Set up projects, because they are necessary. Because if they work properly, then we'll also tell others to copy them. And if they don't work, we'll know what we shouldn't be doing, and we'll learn from our mistakes. So we need these network hubs. That's what we're preparing now. For the year 2016-2017, we're going to change the way we work. We've got a year's work ahead of us. We'll be talking to teachers in the centers, to vocational training college managers, directors, and seeing how we can all work together as network hubs. That's what we're doing in our vocational training department, with the support of everybody in the team. What is efficient management? Well, we're convinced that efficient management in the administration is a kind of management that makes things happen. We, as the administration, don't want to forbid things. No, we want to facilitate things, help them to happen, and provide the necessary context so that vocational training schools can do what they need to do. That's what institutions need to do, and that's what we're preparing to do, so that together we can all link these changes together. Because our ability to respond, I think, needs to be based on intuition. It can't be based on rules and regulations. Of course it can't. Rules and regulations they're just there to support. They're to provide us with some kind of coverage. But it's intuition which is going to allow us to keep up the rate, keep up the speed that we need to do to find responses to all the changes that are out there ahead of us. And the thing is that we're entering into a knowledge society. We're changing things. We're transforming our vocational training colleges, and companies are doing that as well. And we need to become intelligent organizations. And I don't mean just companies, I mean VET colleges as well. We're not just education centers. We need to change the way that we are organized. Of course, we're part of the education system, but we need to work differently. We need to be smart organizations. What is a smart organization? Well, a smart organization, or a smart VET center, is going to be prepared to transform, to change, to adapt to surroundings as efficiently and effectively as possible. That's what a smart organization is. An organization that is able to recognize and value the work of its teaching staff. You need to be able to appreciate what your teachers do, because they're key elements, they're key parties, key players in everything that you do, and we need to trust them as well. It's not just the schools and the training centers that need to trust administration, but vice versa. And internally as well, teachers need to know that they can be transparent, because we need everybody to be on board. Everybody needs to row together in this boat. We talk about a new kind of culture which tends to generate knowledge, but it also needs to generate commitment. And if we want people to be committed, if we want people to be engaged in our VET college, we need them to be convinced. They need to trust what they're doing, and they need to know that they're appreciated. And I need you to know that we do appreciate what we do, what you do. We know that we've gone through a couple of very difficult tools, and I know I always put you under a great deal of pressure, and I'm going to put you even under even more pressure so that we really up to speed in 2016 and 2017. I'd like to recognize you, but everybody needs to be on board. The bedrock of any organization are people, not robots, not machines, but people. Without people, we are nothing. So that's what we need to do. That's what we need to strengthen. If we develop our VET colleges and base that development on people, if people are the bedrock of our organizations, then these people need to be able to develop their work and have ideas and be able to develop those ideas. And they need to be able to self-manage within VET colleges. And I'm not just talking about the managers in the colleges, but everybody needs to have the ability to decide. That's what we're trying to prepare. We need to be able to give our vocational training centers more independence, and the people within them need to be independent. They need to be able, if they want to, take the most appropriate route to progress. And I'm saying this because it means that VET colleges need to change their culture. We've been working on quality culture, and the thing is, if we're getting into a knowledge society, if we need knowledge professionals, if we're going to have smart organizations, then there we internally are going to have to introduce applied innovation as a culture, not as a process, not as a procedure in which you can improve in a classroom or you can improve a methodology or in a workshop. That's all very good, but it's not what we need. The structure, the VET college itself, the whole of the VET college needs to work on innovation culture, and that's what we're doing here. Because survival within society is not obligatory. If you want to survive, it's because you want to survive. It's not obligatory. You can just die out if you want, but that would be the worst thing to do. But survival, if we want to be an advanced, modern society, a competitive society in which the social welfare that we all want is guaranteed, we're going to have to work on good things, new things, and different things. And this means that all organizations need to change. Companies, of course, those are the first one to change, but we need to be behind them because we need to support both companies and people. And this is fundamental. So innovation's the reply. I always say that. Innovation takes us to lifelong learning. If we're innovating, then of course we're going to have to carry on learning to carry on innovating. That's what the learning society is all about. Innovation is a kind of culture. It's not a process. It's a culture. It's a field of knowledge which is accepted both by VET training centers and by the teaching staff. Innovation is always a choice as well. You can either want to be innovative or not. You can either want things to stay as they've always been, or you can want to innovate and change things and think about how things can be done differently. At the end of the day, it's an initiative, a decisive initiative which the college takes and decides what they want to do and try to organize and plan any other kind of activity. That's what you do with innovation, in the same way that we manage other activities. The innovation culture is one more thing, it's a fundamental part of our organization. But we need to differentiate between continuous improvement, which is linear innovation, or disruptive innovation, which is really what changes the way we do things. And we now especially need to concentrate on disruptive or breakthrough innovation. Of course, we have to carry on with continuous improvement, but we need to include disruptive or breakthrough innovation. And these changes are difficult, complex, we need to convince people, but they're very, very important. And it's important to do all of this, because at the end of the day, lots of people have got ideas, sometimes many, many ideas, but what you don't always have are opportunities. Ideas need to become opportunities. If we're innovative, if we've got an organization that's prepared to innovate, we need to create these opportunities. This is what we call innovation in action. We need to put into operation all of this. We need to generate an idea, pinpoint the opportunities, develop those opportunities, and first and foremost, get it up and running. That's what we need to do. That's what we're already doing in many occasions, but we need to do it deeper. Ideas, opportunities, and get those opportunities up and running. We've spoken about that on many occasions. Sometimes opportunities, these little opportunities, take us to 3 more concepts which we're sometimes worried about, which are risk, uncertainty, and ambiguity. It's true. Everything is risky. Everything that we do is risky. It's all very nice to sit back and be happy in our work. Why should we change? Things are okay as they are. Why should I change? I mean, things are okay. Look at our school. Look at the amount of pupils that we've got. Companies accepting our students to work on practical basis. But we can't carry on like that because we need to progress. We need to take risks. Uncertainty is out there. We don't know if we're going to improve or not, but all changes are good. All changes are good, and probably things will improve, and this will probably improve our organization. And if the organization improves, many other things will improve. And initially, everything is ambiguous. You can't get concrete, real replies. Initially, you start saying, where are we going? Where are we heading? What are we heading towards? We know where we want to get, but we don't know whether things are going to work or not. I can remember many years ago in Japan, a maestro, fantastic maestro that I had, that I used to live with in Japan. I spent many years living in Japan. He was talking to me about Zen philosophy, and it's worth reading up on Zen philosophy. And he gave me an example. He always used to say to us, look, a person who contemplates, if they just dive into the water, they're not going to swim, they're going to try to understand the water and they'll sink. They'll die. What I'm saying with that is you need to do. It's no good just thinking about things. You need to walk that talk. You need to get involved. So we need to do whatever we can, wherever we are, with what we have within our reach. Because we're going to have the support. We're going to have all the resources that we need. The President of the Basque Country has promised us that. And I promise that you have the necessary tools to carry out these changes. We know the efforts that teachers are making. We're really very aware of that. And we're doing everything that we can so that you can do things to your best of ability. We need to work in a flexible framework so that you can carry on working easily and not worry about success. Success will arrive. And what's most important is to remember that this isn't just a destination. It's not a final destination. We're in the middle of an ongoing journey. There is no end point. We're going to always be in that journey. We're always going to be traveling along a road. There's a lot to be done if we're going to try to provide a reply to the problems that emerge. Because this sentence by Paulo Coelho, what it says to us is that we need to fight, we need to struggle for what we believe. And if we're defeated, we need to know why we've been defeated. We don't just need to be defeated without even knowing what we're fighting for. We know what we're fighting for. We're fighting for our people, for our companies, for ourselves, and for our society. We want the best society that we can have, the most supportive society, and vocational education and training in all of that has an important role to play. Sometimes I ask myself the following question. Okay, if things are okay, if we're emerging from this crisis, okay, we've suffered in the crisis, things aren't that bad, figures are looking promising, and okay, you could be right, things could be better, okay, we're gradually improving, there's going to be an important improvement. Our figures aren't bad if you compare our situation with others, but comparatively we're not in a bad situation. But there's still room for improvement. And what's even more important, it's not so much that there's room for improvement, it's more to the point that a lot of the figures that you see up on the screen will get worse if we don't pull our socks up, because we know that companies are going to ask us for professionals we don't have, that there are jobs out there, there are vacancies that cannot be filled out there. I know you find that hard to believe, but there are vacancies out there that cannot be filled because we need to prepare people with different kinds of skills, and we're doing that as quickly as possible. Either we change, either we transform what we do, or these data, which can be improved because they were certainly better before the crisis. We only had an employment rate of 5.5% before we got into the two most recent crises that we've just had. But if we don't change things, they'll actually get worse. It's true that if you look at educational facts and figures, they're all very interesting. We've got good figures. We are improving. Of the 256 regions that exist in Europe, we are in 4th place as far as people who have higher level educational qualifications go. We're 4th in the ranking. And we have unemployment levels here of 9.4%. But there's 23% unemployment in the rest of Spain. We need to improve our figures. I'm impressed, our figures are good, but either we keep getting better or these figures are going to get worse. We need to carry on changing our education system. If we look at GDP per capita, we can say, okay, if the European average is 100, we are 22% above the European GDP average. The same goes for Navarre, the same goes for Catalonia. But those of you that come from other parts of Spain, look at your figures. What's in green seems to be saying, okay, we're doing well. But as our president often says, if you want to carry on staying still, you're going to have to carry on running. We can't just sit back and rest on our laurels. Otherwise, we're never going to grow. We need to carry on progressing. We need to carry on driving forward. But if we look at poverty indexes, if you look at this list, we're not bad. We've got a 10.2% of rate of risk of poverty. But we need to get that to be 5% by 2020 so that there are fewer and fewer people suffering. We need to do that, and we are going to reduce this risk of poverty, but the only way to do that is by working. Okay, you can say, things aren't looking so bad, we're improving, but if you need to improve, you're going to have to run very fast, very, very fast. Because from a study by a bank and another institute, I can't remember their name, they've carried out a survey in which they've said that in the next 10 years, just through retirement, we're going to have to replace over 8 million jobs. That means hundreds of thousands of jobs in the next 10 years are going to have to be filled just because of the people that are retiring, without thinking of the new jobs that will be created when the economy revives again. So there are going to be hundreds and thousands of jobs out there, vacancies that we are not going to be able to fill. And we need to think about the role that guidance has to play so that we know where the labour market is, where there's work, so that we can gradually prepare ourselves for that. In the Basque Country, we've been working on this for many years, and we've been working on many areas, and you've done some great things. I admire everything that you do, because I know that you're prepared to accept everything that we offer you. We're working on advanced specialization. We now have double the number of students in dual training, but we want to triple that or quadruple that. We want to have vocational ongoing training in over 3,000 companies here. We're working on applied innovation. We've worked this year on over 240 projects of applied innovation. We're also working on creativity. We've got a Basque Institute for Applied Creativity. We're working on creativity in the classroom. We're trying to improve our management models, and we've set up advanced management models. We're working on entrepreneurship. Last year, we set up 74 companies. This year, we're going to set up 100 companies. In the last 10 years, 450 companies have been established within vocational training colleges, and we're also trying to change our vocational training colleges. We're also looking at things in a different way. We're working things in a different way. We are organizing ourselves differently. And I need to thank you. Why do I have to thank you? Because there are over 1,500 teachers that are working in all of that. They're testing things. They're trying to see what we have to do so that by 2016, 2017, that's the next school year, we're all working towards this, and we can see whether things are working well, what changes need to be carried out. We've got over 55 vocational training colleges here, over 1,500 teachers, lecturers and administrative staff that are all involved in that. And we're also involved in internationalization. As my regional minister said, we're going to concentrate more and more. We've created an international campus of vocational education and training. That's important for us. Our ability to learn is going to be perhaps the only competitive edge that we have in the future. We don't have any raw material, we just have people. And these people's ability to learn is going to be our competitive edge. That's why what we're doing is so important. Some people ask me, how come the ET is in the Basque Country is going to be able to do this? It's very simple. I always say this. The first thing is, it's thanks to our VET colleges, their management teams that are always there, thanks to the support of the teaching staff. I've already mentioned the number of teaching staff that are involved in new projects. It's also thanks to the business community and business organizations that support us and support some very daring, risky policies. They provide us with a great deal of support. And there's a decisive support of the government that encourages us to carry on advancing along this route that we know is the one that we have to follow. But especially because we are building basic vocational training all together. And it's not something that we're building all together and against anybody else. No. We want everybody to get involved from the bottom upwards, and that's going to make us unstoppable. Vocational training is going to be unstoppable here in the Basque Country. So what have we done? We've changed the command and control approach to the listen and do approach. Sometimes we disagree, but we need to listen and then we need to do. That's what we in the government, in our department, have as our main objective, to work together with you, as closely together with you as we can, and do things. Innovation requires audacity. Yes, a great deal of audacity. Audacity can change the way we see things and make things that we think are impossible become possible tomorrow. And that's what innovation is. Innovation is thinking, believing, trusting, and being daring. If we had to just base what we do on common sense, then we'd think that the earth was still flat, but it's not flat. I think it's round, as far as I know. We need to be daring. We need to be audacious enough to be daring, to carry on changing, to transforming, to carry on fighting for what we know we have to do. We need to cooperate, we need to share. This is very, very important, because there's also something else that's important, which is that not wanting to is the cause, but not being able to is the excuse. You always can. We're always able to. I said previously that vocational training is part of the education system, and of course the education system has a fundamental principle, which is human beings. Human beings are the bedrock. They're our objective, they're our aim. We need to prepare people. That's a priority, so that people can be free and responsible, so that each human being is able to imagine, to think, to live, happily and calmly. And we in the education system have a great responsibility. We're accepting a great challenge because we are people who train others. For me, this is the best job that there is, to be able to teach people, because many people say that education changes the world. We are preparing people. We are preparing those people who are going to change the world. And if we prepare them properly, then the world will change for better, which I think is what we're trying to do. We're trying to train people well so that they are able to change the world. That's our job. The art of teaching is the art of helping people to discover. We need to help people to discover how to be good professional. We need to help them discover society, help them discover their world, and they need to be prepared for everything that's ahead of them. And I shouldn't leave without also mentioning something else. There's always going to be people out there that are going to have a lot of difficulties to get onto the labour market, many people, because they've been on the unemployment lists for many, many years now. And we need to pay special attention to those people. We need to work to see how we are going to be able to help those people that have been on the unemployment list to upskill so they can find jobs. We can't have people at the age of 50 who are completely desperate, who are in a desperate situation, because a society that has no hope is a dead society. We can't let people see that society is improving, yet they're still unemployed. And vocational training there is going to have a very important role to play, because for many people, we are their final hope. And we need to remember that. Whatever we know, when we talk about things, when we talk to a person, we just need to be people. We need to understand those that have difficulties. We need to support them and encourage them. I always end on this note. Everything that I've said to you is very complex. We're making a lot of progress. We've got another year to keep on driving forward. I'd like to say once again that I'm very, very thankful for everything that you do. We all in our department know that what you're doing. Our president recognizes that. What you're doing is very important. But I know there are ups and downs. There are difficult moments. There are moments when we're tired. You know that every time you try to do something, 5 problems crop up, and you get rid of one of the problems, and another problem crops up. And you know that Basques are always doing the most difficult things. People sometimes fall off things that they're doing. You need safety. You need safety behind you. You need support. You need the support of people that are behind you. Otherwise, you're going to fall down. But if you fall down and you've got support, you can get up again. There's no point in just falling off a building if there's no support net behind you, below you. And if there's a support net below you and the support net's got a hole in it and things fall on top of you once you've gone through the hole, that's no good. You can't just keep falling into a vacuum because you'll die. But you need to grasp things. You need to cling on to things. And there's no point to keep on falling off things. But even if you do fall off things, you need to get up and repeat things. And it's no good just hanging on to things. You need to keep getting up again. And somebody said to me, what happens when you keep falling off things? At the end of the day, it's like being Superman. You have to be Superman, undefeatable. Either they're going to have to shoot us down, or we're going to carry on being supermen and superwomen. And we need who to follow. We need to follow the roadrunner. Just because we're Coyote, we still need to follow the roadrunner, because at the end of the day, We need to do things, carry on doing things, and we need to follow the roadrunner and catch that roadrunner before everybody else. Thank you. Thank you very much.